Hey, this is Molly. Before I introduce you to today's guest, I'm thrilled to tell you about an unbelievable event on May 5th that I am super excited to be a part of. Broadcast live from Atlanta to 100,000 people around the globe, LeaderCast Live is the largest one-day leadership event in the world. Join me and an incredible lineup: Tyler Perry, Andy Stanley, Daniel Pink, and Susie Welch, just to name a few. Again, it's on May 5th, and it's a day of leadership development. To learn more about how you and your team can attend or host a live simulcast, visit leadercast.com. Welcome to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher, where we take you behind the scenes with peak performers to learn what makes them tick and discover how you can apply their lessons to your life. I'm your host, Molly Fletcher. Master the reality you create for yourself. That's the message behind Isaac Lidsky's TED Talk, which has been viewed over 2 million times. Inc. magazine said Isaac Lidsky possessed the most eclectic resume in business. They didn't exaggerate. As a child television star, he played Weasel on NBC's hit show Saved by the Bell. He clerked for Supreme Court Justices Sandra Day O'Connor and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, is the co-founder of an internet startup, and most recently has built ODC Construction into one of the fastest growing construction businesses. And one more thing, he's blind. Isaac shares with us his journey, how losing his sight changed his life, and what we can take away from his story. Follow Isaac Lidsky on Twitter at Isaac Lidsky, and pick up his new book, Eyes Wide Open, which is available everywhere starting March 14th. Isaac Lidsky, I am so excited to have you on. I got to tell you, your bio is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, you run a construction company. You've spoken on the TED main stage. You've authored a book. You graduated from Harvard at 19. You know, you also have a law degree from Harvard. You've clerked for the U.S. Supreme Court Justices, and you were a childhood star. So, I mean, we have about 40 to 45 minutes, so I'm not even sure how we're going to get through this, but let me ask you for really quickly, one quick question is, how do all these things become connected in your life, right? And can you kind of take us on that journey for a minute? You have such an eclectic background and have done so much in your young life. Can you touch on that for me for a minute?
Sure, absolutely. So first off, thanks for having me on. It's a real pleasure. This eyes wide open vision that I talk about and write about, that I sort of gained in the process of sort of slowly losing my sight. At sort of one of the sort of principles at the core of that vision that I try to live by is, really being fundamentally honest with yourself and accountable to yourself in terms of your definition of success and what's important and what matters. Mm-hmm. And the way that has manifested itself in my life is that as I've kind of gone through at various points in my life, I've found myself wanting to, pursue other paths that were more important to me or less important as sort of time evolved and circumstances evolved. So, yeah, I've been blessed to kind of stumble through a lot of different chapters and do a lot of really cool things, and it's been a beautiful ride.
Well, and what's amazing with all those things I rattled off, Harvard and obviously a U.S. Supreme Court Justice and all those things, I never mentioned that you're blind, and you've had a rare and slowly degenerative. Here we go, we got it. Degenerative disease. But
Yep.
You lost your sight fully, I believe I understand, at 25. But you talk about how in some ways losing your sight was actually a way in which you gained your vision. Can you tell me about that?
Sure. Yeah. So I progressively lost my sight from about age 12 to about age 25. And it was a bizarre experience. It created all these very odd, effects. And it was definitely challenging and difficult to go through. At the same time, it was kind of a peek behind the curtain so to speak, as into the sort of the power of the mind to really create an immersive reality that we then sort of believe as is truth or is objective or is immutable. So, sight is, and this is the sort of the key idea of my TED Talk, is that sight is, I think, one of the best examples of this. Our experience of sight, my experience of sight before I began to lose it, is that, seeing is believing, right? You open your eyes and there's the world. And the truth really couldn't be any more different. I mean, sight is this unique, personal, virtual reality that you create in your mind that implicates your knowledge, your memories, your opinions, your emotions, all these things. And yet you experience it so passively and so, immersively, if that's a word.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I kind of had that insight about sight itself, I started to, ask myself if there weren't other aspects of my life where I was, maybe experiencing the same thing, where I was, assuming to be true and immutable, things that were really of my own making, of my own creation. And that was this sort of eyes wide open vision that I really credit with sort of enabling me to live a very blessed life. I mean, I say going blind at the end of the day was one of the best things that had ever happened to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so, I mean, this book, it comes out March 14th, right? Eyes Wide Open. I love that title, given your circumstances.
Thank you.
It's absolutely awesome.
Thank
you. Tell me, do you take us on that journey that you're on, if you will, with regards to the stories? And I watched your TED Talk, of course. The stories, and I connect with this so much, that we tell ourselves that oftentimes are not true, but then, to your point, they create our reality. Is that what? Tell me about the book, Eyes Wide Open. Does it touch on that a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. So the way the book is organized, there are 8 chapters, and each kind of applies this eyes wide open, vision to a particular sort of theme or aspect of life. So fear, our misconceptions about luck, success, our struggle to communicate effectively with each other, those kinds of things. So those are kind of more an analytical effort to apply, this eyes wide open vision to a particular construct. And while there are plenty of stories from my life in the chapters, again, they're more about the ideas or the concepts. Then I kind of intersperse between the 8 chapters 7 what I call fishing trips, and those are really sort of more narrative anecdotes from sort of different episodes in my life where I sort of ask the reader to kind of come along with me and see how these ideas, played out for me in my life.
Mm. And so how do you, I think about what you went through, and it would be so easy to get angry, right? And to be, why me? And everybody in life has things that sometimes don't work out exactly how we anticipated them. Oftentimes, though, it's something not potentially as difficult or challenging, right, as losing our sight. How did you go through that process of shifting this mindset? Because you clearly made a mindset shift to allow you to recognize the blessing and the opportunities that existed inside of this challenge versus being
Sure.
angry about it.
Sure. So, as I kind of explore this eyes wide open insight, I became convinced that we choose in every single moment who we are and how we live our lives. Right? That's a choice that we make, whether we're aware of it or not, whether we do so intentionally and with awareness or not. That's a choice we're making every moment.
Sure.
And to my mind, once you buy that, and I try to convince the reader of that in my book, once you buy that, the rest, is details, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how do you shift your mindset, right? Like, I'm a big news story, old story, new story, right? And we tell ourselves a story oftentimes, and we have to shift to a new story. So there's so many people that listen to this podcast who are leaders, CEOs, they're part of a team. Obviously they have a personal life, and there's things in their life that they're afraid of, and there are things that are scary. How would you tell them to make that shift from overcoming something that's scary to them, that's fearful? Obviously, you had almost, 13 years of gradually progressing through this process of becoming blind that was really scary, I'm sure. What kind of shifts did you make specifically, right? Like, how would you advise somebody who's listening to really make that shift so that they can create that a new reality for themselves?
Sure, that's a great question. So, fear is it's the first topic I tackle in the book, and it's a big one. So, as with sight, fear kind of creates a reality that is immersive and is compelling. And out of our ignorance in times of change or crisis, when we confront the unknown, when we have no relevant experience to draw upon, kind of fear steps in and it creates this awfulized version of the world. And it's very pernicious because it's often sort of self-realizing. So how do you take back control of reality from fear and see what's going on? I suggest a couple things. First, I argue that sort of fear's accomplices in kind of lulling us into this false world are heroes and villains, right? So fear keeps us on the sideline by conjuring up others we can blame and celebrate. So I think step one is to take a real hard look at your life and your situation and see if you haven't bought into this false premise of heroes and villains, because there are no heroes and there are no villains, right? At the end of the day, it's just you. And then the second thing to do really is to, I argue in the book, it's two simple questions. What precisely is your problem, and what precisely can you do about it? Mm-hmm. And the rest is noise.
Right. Wow. So do you have an example of that? Like when can you walk me through a scenario in your life where you've gone, this is the problem, and this is what I'm going to choose to do about it?
Sure. So it's an example I tell in the book. It's one of the examples I give in the book. But I'll never forget. There was early on in the sort of my journey to adapt to blindness, I set out on my own with my walking cane to take a walk on Capitol Hill in D.C. And I was sort of practicing my techniques, and I became lost. And I was lost on a sort of quiet, deserted street, alone, and realized my phone at home, and terror took over. And in an instant, there was this awful version of reality where, not only did I feel I was immediately in danger, fight or flight or whatever, but also started to believe all these implications for my life and my future that were just terrible, right? I'll never be independent. I'll never figure this out. Mm-hmm. And it really, it was an amazing experience for me. I took several deep breaths. I sat down on the curb and I started to just kind of think through it rationally. And as I describe in the book, at the end of the day, I really faced no problem at all. I mean, what seemed like this, awful, doom and gloom dread was really, I had no problems. So that moment sticks out. I don't know if I've answered the question.
Well, so you said I've got a problem, and then when you sat on the curb, how did you get out of that situation? What did you do?
So again, what precisely is my problem, and what can I do about it? So I'm on a deserted street, but it's lined with homes, and mm-hmm. it's Sunday, late morning. So most of these homes have people inside them. Mm-hmm. So I can knock on a door and ask someone for help or to borrow their phone. And by the way, it's a beautiful sunny day that I'm enjoying immensely. There's nowhere I have to be right now. My objective is to procure, an espresso. So I really have no problems. And then, so that was, already you say, look, no big problem. And then you say, well, I'd rather not knock on some random person's door and, suffer some awkward, conversation. Maybe I can do better than that. And I went through a progressive sort of series of questioning myself until ultimately I made my way back, all on my own. And the experience wound up giving me far more confidence and growth than an uneventful trip, ever could have.
That's really cool. I know. I think we learned so much from challenges in our life.
No question.
For sure. But I mean, and you did it all by yourself, and you came out of it, and I'm sure it gave you the strength and courage to go on another walk another time. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so now switching gears a little bit, how on earth does somebody graduate from Harvard at 19? It's unbelievable.
Well, they start a couple weeks after they turn 16.
Okay. Okay. So you went through high school fast because you're brilliant. I mean, you just sort of ran through it. Been there, done that.
So I was a little young when I started school, and then I skipped a grade along the way, and then I found myself living in Los Angeles. I moved out to Los Angeles to work on a sitcom,
Right.
and I found myself having decided that acting was not a great career for me, ready and excited to move on to college, but only a junior in high school. So I applied as a junior, and I wrote a letter explaining why I thought I was ready to head off to college. I didn't want to head back to my hometown of Miami for a random last year of high school. So off I went, and the rest is history.
Unbelievable. Wow. And then you went on to law school there too, as well, right?
Yes, with a 2-year sort of stint in between. But yeah, I went back for law school.
Okay, so right, you're out in LA. You were on Saved by the Bell, which is such an iconic show. And one of the questions I had for you is we see so many young actors who get burned out and really struggle to find their identity when they live in that world. So how do you, when you look back at that experience, what did you learn from it, and how did it shape who you are today?
So you get in that industry, or one can tend to get, especially at a young age, sort of an overwhelming barrage of cues that sort of who you are and whether you were successful or not, and what you're about, kind of comes from out there, comes from what other people have to say about it, and all that. That tends to be very harmful, and I think it leads a lot of folks astray in that industry and others. I was blessed to just well, first of all, I have 3 older sisters who made darn sure that no matter how cool and amazing I thought I was as a sitcom actor, in their eyes, I was a very dorky 13-year-old chubby kid, and was absolutely nothing special. So I do credit my sisters with helping me kind of keep perspective. But I always thought the whole celebrity or external attention and publicity and all that was very bizarre and uncomfortable, and was able to think a lot about it. And then as I started to lose my sight, think even more about it. And it really became for me almost a cautionary tale, I guess, or an example of kind of how not to live my life.
Wow. And so you made a conscious effort to say, this has been a fun journey. I've enjoyed it, but I'm out. I'm going to pursue something else.
Absolutely.
And now you are the CEO. Tell me a little bit about what you do now. I mean, you're running a very large construction company.
Yes, so I am very blessed. My partners and I acquired a small, struggling slab and block subcontractor, the concrete foundations and the block masonry, in Orlando, Florida, in 2011. And with a team of phenomenally talented and dedicated and loyal folks, we kind of turned it into a pretty exciting, pretty excellent construction services company that's more than 10 times larger and thriving and growing, and it's just been a heck of a journey. It's been great.
And you lead that organization.
Yes, I serve as the chief executive officer of ODC Construction.
Wow. And so I'm sure people are wondering, there are so many people in this world who have so many challenges every day, right? And they're doing what they do at whatever level they do it at, which is to hopefully the best version of themselves is what I always say, and I hope for every single person. But things that come up for me as I listen and I look at all the things that you've accomplished, and I listen to you, and you're so authentic and sincere and so transparent. But leading a large organization is hard enough when you can see. How does that show up in your life, and how does it serve you in a positive way? And what are the tools and tactics you've created to allow you to do what you do at the highest level, given the daily challenge that you have?
That's a fantastic question, and it's something I talk a fair bit about in chapter 7 of my book. But anyway, I worried early on that my blindness might be an impediment to my leadership or a negative for my company, and it evolved to be just the opposite. I think it's actually been really great for me as a leader and really good for my company, because when I get together with my leadership team, for example, and we meet, and we talk through things. The smile and nod doesn't work with a blind guy, right? Like I gotta hear a yes. And
That's cool.
In the early days, it would happen all the time that, I would ask a question, someone would have an idea, and what do we think? And I would hear absolutely nothing. And I'd say, hey, are you guys nodding? And people would chuckle, oh, yeah, sorry, we're nodding again. And I'd say, that doesn't work. Let's go around the table, and everyone has to say, yes, I agree. It never once happened that everyone said, yes, I agree. There was always, well, I guess I sort of agree. So my blindness actually became, really forced us to communicate at a far deeper level in a more meaningful way. And it was awkward a bit because everyone had to be a little vulnerable and sort of fess up what they thought. But I think it played a big role in our success. So
wow, that's a great story. That's really cool. And you speak some too, right, Isaac? I mean, you and I had the opportunity, for those that are listening to me, when we both did an event where we both were speaking, and I got to meet you and your wonderful wife and your beautiful children, and I just, have admired you ever since. And I know that you're speaking more and more. Tell me a little bit about what you do and who you speak to, and a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that's super exciting. I mean, so I am certain to my core that this eyes wide open vision that I was blessed with, that I gained through blindness, is something that could be very valuable to folks, blind or sighted or whoever. So it's kind of my calling to share it, and with the TED Talk, having gotten a lot of attention, and with my book coming out,
2 million views, you humble man. That's right, you've crushed it.
Yes, 1 million in the first 20 days, which was pretty awesome. Yeah, but anyway, point is, yes, I've been invited to come do my spiel and talk to folks. So I have been traveling a ton. I was in January. I was in 5 countries and I spoke 12 times.
Wow. That's fantastic. That's a busy January.
Yes.
That's a busy January.
Yeah.
Well, so, and then tell me a little bit. You have triplets. I have twin girls.
Yes.
We have 3 girls. I know, but you have triplets. I mean, it's like you can't make this up. I mean, your story is so cool, and you just sort of one thing topples over the next with, candidly, just amazement as I look at what you've done. I mean, how was that? Trying to, doing all the things that you've done at such an amazing level, and then triplets. And I imagine emotionally, right? I love how transparent you are. I feel like I can ask this question. I mean, you can touch them and hold them and kiss them and love them to death, and they know that. I saw that when I was with you, but you can't see them. And I bet that connection becomes pretty powerful in the way that you can connect to them in ways so different than maybe other parents might.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So when I kind of got into my mid 20s, I was really at a point where I had overcome my blindness to the extent where it wasn't a big deal in my life at all. I mean, that may seem odd, but it was almost not a factor for me in my day-to-day experience.
Wow.
And then Dorothy and I had the triplets, which we did not actually set out or intend to have triplets, for the record.
Right.
We're looking to have a single child, but and then everything changed because now I have a burning desire to see my kids' faces. I think I will someday, and it's actually something I talk about with them. They ask me all the time, "Oh, how are those scientists doing? And are they close? And when are they going to help you and all that?" So. But my children definitely have given me a new reason to want to see,
mm-hmm.
And it's just part of life. We talk about it, and it is what it is.
And so, tell me about that. The scientist and the work that's being done there. That's new information for me. That's fantastic, though. Tell me about that.
Yes. So
awesome.
So we've been my family and I. We've been blessed to kind of get to know and champion and support a lot of the researchers that have been laboring for decades to solve these problems. And there's obviously a very, very long answer, but the short answer is they're close.
Wow.
And I am convinced, not as a sort of naive idealist, but as a skeptic, I'm convinced that in the next 3 to 5 to 10 years, I will have a substantial amount of my sight restored. How much and how soon, who knows? But we'll see.
Wow. And when did you learn of this? Like, when did you begin to sort of embark on that and support them and gain that clarity? Because that's got to be kind of an interesting, sort of hope for you, right? In some regards, although you say it's the best blessing you've ever had that you've gone blind, but how does that support you? How does that show up in your life every day?
So, it's a tricky subject. So,
Right.
I got this. So basically the day after I was diagnosed, my mother committed herself and her life to finding a cure, delivering a cure for me.
Wow.
And so it was really, and I was 13. So through her example, and my father joined her in the mission, of course. And it was really through their example that I got exposed to philanthropy and scientific research and that kind of stuff. And I've known these folks along the way. I do talk about in my book that though I don't regret any part of my efforts on behalf of the research and support of the research, and I still very much want to see. In some respects, I was paralyzed by hope early on, and it kind of fed a little bit of a denial, and it kind of played into the hands of my fears, so that instead of focusing on what I could do myself to take control of my reality day in and day out, I had this very sort of desperate and passionate crusade for the cure that would, someday solve all my problems. And in retrospect, that wasn't 100% productive.
Mm-hmm. So I would assume now you talk about it, you're aware of it, you're a part of that solution, but you probably day to day park it to the side of you and live your life.
That is exactly right.
Okay.
That is exactly right. And that has been the case for years. Yep.
Wow. So Isaac, I mean, what is, you're young. How old are you? You're 30 something, correct?
37, yeah.
Wow. So what's next for you? I mean, you are very clear and intentional in the life that you live. Tell me about what's on the horizon for you.
So right now, my number one mission is to spread this eyes wide open vision and philosophy. And so long as there are folks interested in hearing about it and reading about it, I'd like to continue talking about it and writing about it, I guess. Thereafter, what's the next chapter? I have no idea. And frankly, I absolutely love that about my life. There will be other projects and endeavors and pursuits, I'm sure. But I take it a day at a time.
Wow. Well, one of the things that we do on all of our podcasts, which is really fun, is we end with this really cool rapid fire question process. And you are so locked in and intentional that this will be kind of fun, I think. But so I'm going to just fire off some questions. And what I'm challenging you to do is to just fire back with what comes to mind. What are you feeling at this moment and what comes to mind? And I think it'll give and inspire our audience with some pretty cool stuff. So, are you ready? Are your feet in the starting blocks, man?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
All right, babe. All right. So, one word to describe yourself.
Driven.
One word others would use to describe you.
Driven.
Childhood idol.
Childhood idol. It's tough. I don't know. I'm drawing a blank.
Okay. Biggest fear.
None of the above.
Nice. Okay, the last book you read.
The last book I read was A Man Called Ove.
Oh, okay. And what's your favorite book you've ever read?
Ooh, see, I can't pick one favorite.
You can't?
Can't do that. No, right. I love books. I pretty much love everything I read, but I love books.
Yeah. What's your favorite social media channel?
Facebook.
Nice. Okay, what's a hidden talent? Which is, I can't even imagine. I mean, you're already just a ridiculous stud.
Napping.
Napping.
I am a champion napper.
Nice. Do you have a little couch in your office and you just rack out midday?
Anywhere, anytime, I will get some shut-eye.
That's impressive. All right. The best advice you've ever received?
Best advice I have ever received. Be true to yourself.
Best professional advice you've ever given?
Best professional advice I've ever given. I'm drawing a blank. I don't know.
How about live a life with eyes wide open?
I got it. Sorry?
How about live a life with eyes wide open?
Well, you know what I tell my team all the time is figure out why you're here. Figure out what the goal is. Is it about you or is it about our business?
Nice. What's your greatest accomplishment?
Father.
Oh, biggest pet peeve?
People misspell my name.
What's your life motto?
Oh, I mean, live eyes wide open.
Nice, nice. And your morning routine. What do you do in the morning? And I'd love to know your night routine, too.
Well, wait a minute.
Now, this is our rapid fire, so I'm throwing you off. Okay, so...
You got to pick one.
Yeah.
No. One routine, I generally get up by like 5:30-ish, 6-ish, and we'll grab an espresso and sit in front of the computer and catch up a bit, and then I try to get a workout in.
Okay. And what about at night?
Oh, it totally depends if I'm, out to dinner with customers or at home or, whatever.
What's your biggest inspiration?
My children.
Nice. Well, so you rocked that, by the way. You rocked that.
I was nervous, by the way.
Were you?
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing because you've done some pretty incredible things, and if I got you nervous doing that, that's incredible. So, Isaac, I am going to pre-order this book right now, and I can't wait. And people can get on Amazon and all the normal booksellers, right, and get Eyes Wide Open.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Awesome. So we need to do that. This book sounds incredible. I cannot wait to read it. Thank you for sharing,
Thank you.
Your experiences, your life, your fears, what you've overcome with so many people. I know this book will serve so many people in this world. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, as always, for listening. And if you missed an episode, you can listen to previous episodes on iTunes or on mollyfletcher.com. Until next time, stay curious and be a game changer.